It was a typical evening for the staff at Riverside General. The emergency department was busy, filled with the usual chaos of a city hospital. But at around 8:15 p.m., paramedics brought in a new patient, Gloria Ramirez, a 31-year-old woman suffering from late-stage cervical cancer. She was semi-conscious, her speech was slurred, and her heart was beating at an alarmingly fast rate. Nurses and doctors immediately moved to stabilize her condition, and that's when things got a little weird. As medical staff approached Gloria, they noticed something strange, an unusual pungent smell radiating from her body, described by some as a mix of garlic and ammonia. The odor was so strong that it seemed to hang in the air. Even stranger, her skin appeared oily, and some noticed small, crystal-like particles coating her body. Despite the disturbing symptoms, doctors pressed forward. A nurse inserted a syringe to draw blood for tests, but when she did, the air filled with an even stronger wave of chemical stench. Moments after the blood was drawn, the nurse drawing it suddenly felt dizzy. Her face turned pale, and she collapsed onto the floor. Then another nurse began to feel nauseous, her limbs growing weak. A third staff member soon followed, gasping for breath before losing consciousness. In a matter of minutes, 6 people had fallen severely ill. The emergency room had to be evacuated. Hospital staff were forced to treat Gloria from a distance, wearing makeshift protective gear. Despite their efforts, Gloria Ramirez died just 45 minutes after being admitted. After the chaos subsided, an investigation was launched immediately. Hazmat teams were brought in, air samples were taken. The hospital was scoured for evidence of a chemical leak, but nothing was found. No gas leaks, no toxic spills, no contamination that could explain why otherwise healthy medical professionals had collapsed simply by being near Gloria Ramirez. Now, with this being such an unusual case, there have been some theories made around this. One theory that gained traction was Gloria battling cancer may have been using dimethyl sulfoxide, or DMSO, a powerful solvent sometimes used as a home remedy for pain. According to chemists, if DMSO accumulates in the body and under the right conditions, it could theoretically break down into dimethyl sulfate, a highly toxic chemical capable of causing paralysis, organ failure, and death. Some experts proposed that when hospital staff drew Gloria's blood and exposed it to oxygen, a deadly chain reaction occurred, releasing toxic gas into the air. But the DMSO theory was never fully proven. Doubts remained. Skeptics argued that the transformation into dimethyl sulfate under body temperature conditions would be incredibly unlikely. Others whispered darker theories. Was there an industrial accident nearby, covered up to avoid lawsuits? Did the hospital mishandle chemicals and blame it on the patient? Or was something even more sinister at work? Gloria Ramirez's family demanded answers. They believed she had been the victim of negligence or worse, a scapegoat for a hospital trying to hide its mistakes. An autopsy was delayed for weeks. When her body was finally examined, it was found to be severely decomposed, far more than what would normally be expected. To this day, the official cause of the death is listed as cardiac arrest, brought on by cancer complications. But most people don't buy this explanation, and we may never know what happened to Gloria Ramirez. Brian Schaefer was 27 years old, a second-year medical student at Ohio State University, with a future that looked almost textbook perfect. He was charming, intelligent, and well-liked by friends and professors alike. To those around him, Brian seemed like the type of person who had everything figured out, someone destined for success. But behind his confident exterior, Brian had been quietly struggling. Just 3 weeks before spring break in 2006, Brian's mother, Renee, passed away from cancer. The loss had hit him hard. Friends say he kept his emotions bottled up, but it was clear the grief was weighing on him. Still, he insisted on pushing forward with life, diving into his studies and maintaining appearances. On March 31st, 2006, the Friday before spring break, Brian made plans to blow off some steam. He and his friend Clint Florence decided to go out for drinks. It was one of the first warm nights of the year in Columbus, Ohio, and campus bars were packed with students celebrating the end of midterms. The two met around 9 p.m. and started the night at Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar located in the South Campus Gateway complex. Over the next few hours, they bar hopped through the area, having drinks at a few different locations. At some point, they met up with another friend, Meredith Reed, who gave them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna around 1:15 a.m. to finish out the night. Security cameras at the bar captured footage of the trio taking an escalator up to the second-floor entrance. Brian was seen in the video wearing jeans, a short-sleeved polo, and tennis shoes. He appeared slightly buzzed but alert, laughing, walking normally. That was the last confirmed sighting of Brian Schaefer. What happened next remains one of the most confounding mysteries in recent history. Inside the bar, Meredith and Clint lost track of Brian. They assumed he had wandered off to talk to someone or gone to the bathroom. Around 2 a.m., as the bar was closing, they tried calling and looking for him, but there was no sign of him anywhere. They waited outside by the escalators, scanning the crowd as people filtered out, but Brian never came. They tried his phone, but no answer. Eventually, they assumed he'd gotten a ride home or had left without telling them. It wasn't until the next day, when Brian missed a planned trip to Miami with his girlfriend, that people started to worry. Not only did he never board the flight, he never even made it back to his apartment. His car was still in the same spot, untouched. His bank account and credit cards showed no activity. His cell phone had gone dark. Brian had simply vanished. Police immediately reviewed surveillance footage from the bar and surrounding areas. This is where the case takes a surreal turn. The cameras outside the Ugly Tuna showed Brian entering the bar with his two friends. Later, they captured Clint and Meredith leaving around closing time. But Brian, he was never seen coming out. Police replayed the footage over and over. There were only two entrances to the bar, the escalator out front and a service door in the back, but mostly used by staff. The service door led to a construction zone and was monitored by additional cameras, but again, no sign of Brian. It was like he had simply disappeared inside. Officers even entertained the possibility that Brian had disguised himself or changed clothes to slip out unnoticed, but the footage didn't support that theory. Every person who left was accounted for, except Brian. They searched the bar, the stairwells, the roof, the bathrooms, the construction site next door, but there was nothing. As the days passed, his family grew increasingly desperate. Brian's father, Randy, put up missing posters across the city and personally walked the campus every night. He did interviews, pleaded for help, and hired private investigators, but nothing surfaced. Investigators interviewed dozens of people, bar staff, other patrons, and even Brian's friends. The friend who had been with him that night, Clint Florence, quickly lawyered up and refused to take a polygraph test, a fact that raised eyebrows, though police never labeled him a suspect. Clint has never been officially linked to anything suspicious, but his refusal to speak publicly or cooperate any further has fueled endless speculation. Then there was Brian's girlfriend, Alexis. The two had talked about getting engaged. She tried calling his phone every day. Most of the time it went straight to voicemail, except for one night in September. 5 months after his disappearance, Alexis called again, and this time, the phone rang, just once. Phone records show it pinged a tower in Hillard, a suburb about 14 miles away, but the authorities couldn't trace it further. It could have been a glitch, or it could mean someone had the phone. That would be the last time any trace of Brian's cell was detected. Brian's family never gave up hope, but tragedy struck again in 2008. His father, Randy, was killed in a freak accident when a tree branch fell on him during a storm. At his funeral, well-wishers signed him an online guest book. Among the messages was one that stood out. "Dad, I love you. Love, Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands." The post was traced back to a public computer in Franklin County. Authorities dismissed it as a cruel prank, but to this day, no one knows who wrote it. Over the years, rumors have ranged from reasonable to bizarre. Some believe Brian suffered a head injury or overdose inside the bar, and that his body was somehow hidden, possibly during construction. Others think he may have staged his disappearance and fled the country. There's even speculation about a connection to the smiley face killers theory, which links a series of young men's drownings across the Midwest, but there is no evidence. No crime scene, no body, nothing. Nearly 2 decades later, the disappearance of Brian Schaefer remains one of the most chilling mysteries in recent history. A man walks into a crowded bar, surrounded by friends, on camera, and then he's gone. No one saw him leave, no one heard him scream, no one has seen him since. So what happened to Brian Schaefer? Mara Murray was 21 years old, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Smart, athletic, and deeply loved by her family. But on February 9, 2004, she got into her car, drove into the White Mountains of New Hampshire, and was never seen again. It's a mystery that has haunted the true crime community for nearly 2 decades. Not just because Mara vanished, but because of what she left behind. Earlier that day, Mara emailed her professors saying there had been a death in the family. She'd be out of town for a week, but there was no death. She then packed up her dorm room, withdrew cash from her bank account, and bought alcohol at a local liquor store. She got in her black Saturn sedan and started driving north, away from everything and everyone. Around 7:30 p.m., Mara crashed her car on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. A local resident heard the crash and called the police. Another neighbor briefly spoke to Mara. She appeared shaken but said she already called for roadside assistance. That wasn't true. No call had been made. When police arrived less than 10 minutes later, Mara was gone. The car was locked. Her belongings, including alcohol, school books, and a damaged box of wine, were still inside. There were no footprints in the snow leading away from the car. It was like she had just vanished into the cold and dark woods. The search for Mara began almost immediately. State police, helicopters, canine units, all combed the area, but there was no trace, no scent trail, no physical evidence she had walked away or been taken. Family and friends were baffled. There was no obvious reason for her to be in that area. She had not told anyone, not even her boyfriend or family, where she was going. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered unusual details. Just days before the disappearance, Mara had been visibly upset at work. Her supervisor said she'd broken down in tears after receiving a phone call, though no one knows what was on the other end. She had also been in trouble at school, caught using stolen credit card numbers to order food. Not a serious crime, but enough to weigh on her. There were rumors of a troubled relationship with her boyfriend, and some believed Mara had been trying to escape pressure from school, family, or something personal. But still, why go to the White Mountains? Why crash and vanish? Over the years, theories have exploded online. Some believe Mara was picked up by a passerby and met with foul play. Others think she chose to disappear, to start a new life. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no tire tracks from another car, just her, gone. One man came forward in 2006 claiming to have seen a young woman fitting Mara's description running through the woods the night she vanished. Another tip suggested she had been living in Canada under a new identity. Neither was ever confirmed. The case grew colder as years passed, and the online speculation only grew hotter. Web sleuths combed through every detail, her last phone calls, ATM surveillance, even classmates who might have known something. Mara's father, Fred Murray, has never stopped looking for answers. He has appeared on national news, pleaded with law enforcement, and returned to New Hampshire time and again to search. In 2021, authorities conducted a ground search in an area near the crash site, based on new ground-penetrating radar findings. A cadaver dog reportedly signaled at a specific location, but no human remains were found. And to this day, Mara's disappearance remains one of the most talked about missing person cases in American history. No definitive answers, no arrest, no body, just a black Saturn on a snowy road, and a woman who simply vanished.